Chapter 1, Master. He had lost track of the times he dreamed of a voice by his ear, softly calling Master, Master, until his heart softened. And yet, that tenderness was quickly followed by bitter pain. He'd spent these 100 years in silence and solitude. Above the bamboo peak, there was nothing left beyond a single, withered peach tree and a damaged chin with broken strings. He spent his days in seclusion, focusing his efforts on cultivation techniques so he wouldn't be heavily injured ever again. As to why he was trying too hard, he couldn't say. The person he wanted to protect and wait for would probably never appear again. He lit a lamp and sat by his desk, raising his brush as he prepared to paint. But he didn't feel like he could draw anything. In the end, he could only set down his brush and quietly walk out of the room, staring at that peach tree and damaged chin. It wasn't clear what his thoughts were. He stood there for one day and one night without realizing it. "Ayya, what an emotionless fellow," a marveling voice suddenly appeared on Bamboo Peak. Mujin turned to see a man dressed in blue robes, hand holding a gentlemanly fan. His lively eyes examined Mujin with interest. "With your cultivation level, you could become an immortal. Why do you still stay in the mortal realm?" Mujin was uncertain. "You are. This little deity is Aoshin. I was just passing by when I felt an aura of severed emotions in the mortal realm. A moment of curiosity led me over for a look." This little deity never expected to see someone interesting. Mujin gave him a nod. "Would the esteemed deity like to come in and sit?" Aoshin examined Mujin from head to toe again. "I was wondering why you were still mortal. As it turns out, you just haven't undergone heavenly tribulation yet. With your skills, it shouldn't be hard to ascend into an immortal. Could it be that disaster hasn't struck yet?" Mujin chuckled and lightly shook his head. "Since we had the fate to meet, this little deity shall guide you on a few pointers." Aoshin pinched his fingers together as he calculated the fates, before suddenly laughing. "This is certainly an interesting calamity. Just destroy that chin over there. After it's been ruined, you'll pass through your tribulation." As he finished, Aoshin couldn't help but secretly whisper to himself, "I've never seen such a simple tribulation." Mujin still shook his head as before, causing Aoshin to give him an odd look. "It's all right if I don't pass this tribulation," Mujin said. "Hey." Aoshin laughed. "This is my first time meeting anyone like you. Giving up the chance to ascend into heaven for a single chin. Judging by your looks, you won't survive past 20 more years without ascension." Mujin stared blankly at the chin for a while before speaking in a daze. "I'd throw away 1,000 years of cultivation and never become an immortal, rather than destroy this chin." Aoshin gave a start at seeing Mujin's expression. For a second, he couldn't tell whether the other was talking about not destroying the chin, or not regretting his feelings. Esteemed deity came with good intentions, but Mujin must politely refuse. "But, if you'd like to stay, Mujin can only receive you with a cup of tea. If you'd like to leave, forgive Mujin for not seeing you off a long distance." Aoshin raised an eyebrow before angrily flicking his sleeves to stalk off. "You don't know what's good for yourself. You don't know what's good for yourself." Perhaps, it was because none of them knew which words were good and which ones were bad when they spoke to him. Chapter 2, Catalpa Guqin. Evil Disciple. "The soul-shredding whip lashed against my back, the pain comparable to my soul being torn apart. In a trance, I could hear the sect master angrily denouncing me. This is for defying sect rules and rashly indulging in vulgar thoughts." What appeared in my mind was the handsome face of a man dressed in white robes. He loved to sit beneath a peach tree atop Bamboo Peak, listening to me play a long, drawn-out melody. Every time I finished, he'd look at me half smiling, half helpless, and say, "Kiner, you played in the wrong key again." Another lash struck me, its noise echoing through the open, spacious expanse of the everlasting hall. "This is for the worst offense of heresy and treason, improper thoughts towards your own master." My fingers curled up involuntarily from the pain, but my eyes refused to admit defeat as they rose to meet the sect head's angry ones. The corners of my mouth drew up slightly. "Master, so he is. Improper thoughts or not, Guqin was merely attached to Mujin as a person. What does that have to do with you, sect head?" Beneath the punishment terrace, celestial sect's elders gasped with rage at these words, their faces turning green. Only Auntie Qiling's 4 eyes were red as she mouthed at me to say no more, say no more. Even she thought I had made a mistake. All of the celestial sect thought that I was wrong and guilty of the most heinous crimes. But where was I wrong? If anything, perhaps it was the wrong fate. "Bastard scoundrel. Things have gotten this far, but you still don't know how to repent. The soul-shredding whip lashed down viciously again as I gritted my teeth and held back my cries. Do you admit your mistakes? The sect head demanded. No, mistake. Great. Great. So this is the good disciple that Mujin raised. The sect head's rage turned into laughter. To steal the miracle medicine of the immortals, you incited your fellow disciples to go to Death Gorge, resulting in heavy injuries for that disciple. Isn't this true? I remained silent. After Master was heavily injured, he fell into a coma without waking up. With his life in imminent danger, only the Death Gorge's miracle medicine could save him, but that was a place where anyone who went in never came out. Master's temper would never allow anyone to go there on his behalf for medicine, so my only chance was to go while he was unconscious. Unexpectedly, senior sister Feixiang followed me inside as well. In the end, the medicine was found and Master saved, but my senior sister incurred heavy wounds while shielding my way out of the gorge. I could only beg the elders to help. When the matter of sneaking into Death Gorge to steal the medicine was exposed, so were my feelings for my master. That was because the Death Gorge's miracle medicine, although capable of treating tens of thousands of poisons and rejuvenating the dead, was only effective in saving the ones its user loved. An elder spoke from beneath the terrace. This evil disciple stubbornly sticks to her perverse views. She cannot stay within the celestial sect. I respectfully ask that the sect head clean up in place of honored Mujin. We ask that sect head clean up the sect. The crowd chorused. The sect head stared at me, killer intent flashing through his eyes. My heart felt a sudden chill because cleaning up the sect would mean I was no longer Master's disciple. Sect head. Aunt Qiling stood up, her eyes were red. Kiner, Zikin is still the honored's disciple. Why not wait for his honored one to wake and take care of the matter then? You mustn't. Another elder stood up. The honored one possesses a compassionate heart. I'm afraid that he'll only let her go. If anyone notices Ziking after she leaves the celestial sect, I fear the celestial sect will lose face and prestige. Aunt Qiling glared at that elder before flicking her sleeves and walking away. Silence fell upon the everlasting hall before the sect's head's voice turned grave. Evil disciple Zikin violated the ethics of acceptable relations. For refusing to repent, she shall face 50 lashes and be expelled from the celestial sect. 50 lashes were enough to send me soul-shattering, but it was his last words that scared me the most. I said, Zikin is Master's disciple. As long as Master doesn't expel me, I'll remain his disciple. There was an elder who laughed coldly at my words. HMPH, celestial sect has never accepted demons. If not for the honored one's compassion, a half-spirit half-demon monster like you never would have been accepted. Those words were full of scorn, they were also the facts. I used to be a Guqin that carried traces of spiritual qi until an immortal refined me into human form. But because my kin's spiritual qi wasn't sufficient to support my new shape, the immortal could only mix it with some demon qi to complete my transformation. Half spirit, half demon, I had no one of the same species or a common clan. Even that solitary immortal eventually passed away with the years. I lived through countless years in ignorance until I met Master. As the bright moon rose over the sea, he stepped over by cover of moonlight just like the gods of legends. I grabbed onto him without letting go, so he asked me with a soft smile, not going home. No home. If that's so, do you want to come back with me to Bamboo Peak, become my disciple, and take that as your home? All of my memories became bright and distinctive beginning from that moment. He gave me a name, taught me techniques, and showed me how to recognize words. Atop Bamboo Peak, he accompanied me to watch the rain, snow, wind and frost of the celestial mountain and led me to traverse every inch of the peak. In their eyes, he was the lofty and far-removed honored Mujin, who showed compassion to all and was yet emotionless. But I knew he had mood swings too. He'd smile softly when I was joyful, grow angry when I was mischievous, and turn anxious when I was hurt. There's no need for more words, the sect head cut off my train of thought. Start the punishment at once. So speaking, he handed the soul-shredding whip to an execution elder. The yin stone on my wrists and ankles had sealed off all my energy, making it impossible for me to resist. The execution elder differed from the sect head in that he dealt out many of the celestial sect's punishments. He could whip a person 100 times without ever seriously injuring them, or take away half their souls with just a single lash. When the first lash fell, I knew that celestial sect was going to be my final resting place. Master, when you know I'm dead, will you be sad? I don't want to see you sad. I don't know how many times I'd been hit, but I only knew I couldn't feel any pain anymore. My vision flickered in and out of darkness, but a single voice seemed to grow clearer and clearer. "Kinder, kinder," it kept calling as if it'd never stop. "Stop." A stern cry burst into my hearing. I could faintly discern it as Aunt Qiling's voice. "Didn't Auntie leave?" I lifted my head to look about hazily. Someone had broken the stone doors of Everlasting Hall. Auntie's expression was indiscernible against the backlight, but I recognized the silhouette of the figure by her side. My eyes stung with sudden heat as my heart throbbed in pain. I trembled as I stuttered, "Master." Mujin was unaware that the sect head was fond of meeting illegal punishments. His voice was filled with a fierceness that had never been present before. I was only conscious of the yin stones breaking around my wrists before I was taken into a warm and familiar embrace. By now, my vision was too blurry to see his features clearly, but I could feel his hands shaking. It wasn't anything like the smooth and steady way he used to carry me before. "Kinder, it won't hurt." His voice was as soft as it used to be when I was young. Back then, he'd used this tone to coax me into taking my medicine. "Go home, let's go home." "All right, Master will take you back to Bamboo Peak." "Hold it!" the sect head cried out. "Mujin, do you know that your disciple?" How Mujin's disciple is, Mujin is naturally well aware. There's no need for the sect head to take the trouble. The sunlight from outside Everlasting Hall fell on my numb face. I thought the expressions on those elders' faces must be even stiffer than mine. Snow must have fallen recently on Bamboo Peak because the air was cold enough to seep into one's body. I think the top of Bamboo Peak had to be covered in white right now, enough for Master to leave deep prints in the snow with every step. There was nothing but darkness before my eyes. A droning hum sounded in my ears, the results of the executioner's whip. Much of my soul had already been lashed away. Soul-shredding whip, those who died by its lash would never be reborn again. "Master," my voice was already hoarse. "Is your injury well?" He squeezed my hand as he held me. "It's well. Kinder medicine was very effective. When your Aunt Qiling came to find me, I had already woken up. Do you blame me?" He fell silent. "Do you blame me for liking Master?" His silence stretched on. Because I couldn't see his expression, my heart grew alarmed. Then he said, "I don't." And yet, his voice carried indescribable grief. I smiled. "Master, I want to play the Qin. Kinder, be good. Treat your injuries first. This is the last time. Let Kinder play for Master to hear." I bluntly pointed out the reality he refused to acknowledge. He gave a sudden pause, his chest heaving up and down before his steps finally changed directions. He carried me next to the Qin, but I had no strength to set my hands on the strings. My heart sighed as I strove to squeeze out a smile. When I got injured in the past, Master always steeped the tea for me to drink. That tea seemed to have curative properties. "Master, brew me tea one more time today, all right." All right." I felt the warmth by my side left me and did my best to sit upright. When I heard the sound of the door opening, I guessed that Master had already gone inside the house. Unable to support my weight any longer, I slowly leaned forward and rested my face against the strings. They were stretched taut, almost tight enough to cut through the skin on my face. "Starting today, you'll be called Zukin, all right." In a daze, I seemed to hear the first words that Master had spoken to me on Bamboo Peak. "In the future, tell Master whenever you've been bullied or mistreated. Master will protect you." I didn't know what my purpose for living was in this life. But it was my great fortune to earn your protection. Abruptly, my heavy, stiff, and cold body seemed to have lightened significantly. I lifted a hand and placed it on the Qin strings, my thoughts drifting farther and farther away without my say. "Master. I can play the Qin now." "Oh? Let Master have a listen." "Kinder, do your fingers hurt from using so much strength?" "Nope. But as I see it, these Qin strings won't be able to bear more than a few times of your playing. The strings won't break. As long as Kinder is alive, the strings will never break." I smiled slightly as my index finger lightly brushed a string. Twang. The snapping sounds that followed were like that of a cuckoo crying blood. With the strings broken, my eyes gradually closed. Faintly, I seemed to hear the sound of a teacup shattering before a deathly stillness settled upon the world. End of story.